You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Hey, welcome back to 40 Fit Radio, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. We are T-minus less than 24 hours into 2020. Wow, 2020. That's almost like a movie. Wasn't there a movie that was like 2000 or something? Space 2000 or something?
It's kind of like if you go back to the like 50s cartoons and what they imagined the year 2000 would be like.
Yeah.
You know, they thought it'd be like the Jetsons, like spaceships flying around. Not quite
like that. Yeah, roll. Yeah, what's the dog they have on the show? I forgot his name. I can't remember. It sounds like Dozer when it sounds like my French bulldog when Joe, my Australian cattle dog, getting after him.
Right, you've been spending too much time around the dogs.
Yeah, it's a dog thing. But yeah, I mean, 2020, man. So 2019 has been a great year for us. I mean, great year at the gym. We've grown the gym, our little gym, Coach Trent and I. 40 Fit Radio has grown, and we mostly stuck to our schedule of getting our podcast done, which was better than the year prior.
Right.
So we definitely have a leg up on that. We got some new habits. 2020 is going to be a great year. Let's just talk real quick. Today we're going to talk about accessory and what we would call assistive exercises or ancillary exercises, supplemental exercises, whatever you want to call them. But those are two separate things. Accessory exercises we'll talk about, and then we'll just quickly differentiate between those and what we would call the supplemental or ancillary exercises, assistive lifts. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, but man, 2019, great year. We're rolling with 40 Fit Radio. Trent and I kind of got on board with several goals. We've still got lots of goals that we're going to launch in 2020. We hope you guys will be a part of that and be a part of the 40 Fit Nation. We want to grow the 40 Fit Nation. We want this podcast to actually be a viable, larger reach podcast for the over 40 population. So, yeah, but we're excited about it. There's going to be some things that we're going to do online. There's going to be some things that we do on private membership where you can access us at a more personal basis. We are launching what I hate to call it a monthly newsletter. Newsletter just sounds so It just sounds kind of old, you know?
Yeah, it just sounds dull.
Yeah, maybe a monthly update or monthly reach out or monthly, I don't know what you would call it, but we just uploaded a new, what do you want to call it, entry form for our monthly update, whatever we want to call it, our monthly update. In the monthly update, we're going to have 40 Fit Nation stories of members that are out there doing what we do and being successful at it and going through their journeys and their struggles and their failures and their successes and all that stuff. We're also going to have training tips in that. We're also going to have updated events where you can hook up maybe with 40 Fit Nation members and go out and do an event together. We're also going to have a private membership section that's beyond that is going to have everything from training tips to Q&As to webinars to programming to working with you on a one-on-one basis and remote basis. So man, we want you to be a part of that in 2020.
So we talked about the importance of keeping training simple, and that's one of the overarching themes of this show. And so when we start talking about accessory lifts, one of the first things I want to say is in the course of your training career, accessory lifts are going to be, I don't know, if I had to throw out a ballpark number, 10, 20% of the work that you'll do.
Maybe.
The majority of the work you should do for the entirety of your training career should be focused around the barbell lifts, right?
The fundamentals, the big three.
The fundamentals, right? The big three
four.
Drive everything. The big four, however you want to call them, those drive everything. So when we start talking about accessories, just keep in the back of your mind that we're talking about the small piece of work that you do after you've already done the main lifts. And this is the case not only, of course, it's the case as a novice when you're only doing the big lifts, but as you get more advanced as a lifter and you start incorporating more accessory lifts, there's still going to be a relatively small part of your training. So with that said, let's get into it. Darren.
Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about what is an accessory lift. What do we mean when we say that?
All right. So we got to kind of differentiate between accessory lifts and what we would call supplemental lifts or assistance lifts or ancillary lifts. Okay, there's a bunch of different terminology and nomenclature there, but here's the way we generally see it, or the way Trent and I generally see it. Accessory lifts are lifts that don't necessarily mimic the big three barbell movements. They can, but they're not necessarily designed to mimic another movement. They're accessory. They're completely separate lifts that can be added into your training for several different reasons. The first reason might be that we need to buy more time in between the big three or the big four workouts. In other words, here's a good example. An accessory lift that we might put in would be chins, and we might alternate chins and deadlifts after a novice has been in the program for 2 to 4 weeks, because we're giving them a little rest on their hips from the deadlift work.
Right.
And we're just dropping a deadlift workout off 1 week and dropping 2 deadlift workouts off the next week. We're alternating it, just like we do with the upper body lifts, like we've talked about between the bench and the press.
Right.
We alternate them back and forth. And we do that once we start getting a little bit farther in the LP. So that's one reason that we might use an accessory lift, is to buy us more time in the recovery cycle.
Right.
Second reason we might use an accessory lift is to variate the training, plain and simple. Create a different stimulus. Emphasize a particular form issue or a particular aspect of the lift that would help or accessorize the big 3 or 4.
Right.
It would help with the fundamental lifts if we did some accessory lifts. And the great way to think about that would be like a barbell row. A barbell row's great to build a nice flat back, isometric contraction of the back, stabilization of the hips, nice tight hamstrings, high hip, and then work those lats.
Right.
And then that in turn helps another accessory lift, which is the chin. And then that in turn helps one of the big threes, which would be the deadlift, your press, your bench.
I'd say
it helps everything.
Especially
almost.
The bench press. Yeah, absolutely.
The bench because of the lats.
Yeah, those people that have a hard time keeping their lats contracted as they squeeze up into that arch. Well, if you think about if you think about a barbell row done off the floor in particular, and you just kind of turn them upside down, they're almost in a bench press position down there. So it can help reinforce that part of the bench.
Yeah, exactly. And so the accessory lifts are lifts that we put into programming because of, number one, increasing the stress recovery cycle, the timeline. Number two, varying training to work on maybe a form issue or another area, another issue, just some variance in training. Number three, boredom in training.
Right.
Generally, we get more complicated and add these accessory lifts in when, we're getting closer to the top of the LP, the training is getting more advanced. I generally we'll talk about what we add in when we add in. So that would be the third reason. Then the last reason might be that we're truly trying to focus on another aspect, another trait, physical trait that we're trying to create out of the 10 general physical skills, another skill, and we're going to use the accessory lift to do that or to assist us with that.
Yeah, so I think of one thing that becomes important as you get deeper into your training career, even if you're just focused on strength still, and you're keeping that as the priority of your training, is building enough muscle mass to support additional strength gains. Because at some point, you simply have to put more cross-sectional area in your muscle bellies. You have to just grow more muscle mass so that they can contract more efficiently and allow you to continue to get strength gains on the bar. And so accessory lifts can be a good way to accumulate a lot of volume. Yeah. And we know that time under tension is an important driver of building bigger muscles. So if hypertrophy, bigger muscles is the goal, then accessory lifts can serve that.
Area. Yeah. And I think that the perfect example here would be this. We have some females in our gym that are in our ladies class. One of them's 55 years old. The press was stalling. Her bench was still moving up a little bit, but she's definitely an intermediate to advanced trainee. And the press was stalling. And so what we did was we took about a 2 to 3 month cycle of adding in tricep extensions, skull crushers, which improves the lat, the tricep strength, specifically isolates. I hate to say this, but accessory movements can isolate and kind of focus in more at a micro level instead of a macro level. It's not a big. They're not generally big compound movements. In other words, it isolates a set group of muscles that we're trying to focus on. And a good example would be the tricep work. So we worked on our triceps, which also builds our lats too. And then we also added some bicep curls in too, with some barbell curls. By doing that, her arms got stronger. She added a little bit of size too in her shoulders. And then when we did the press yesterday, and she was struggling to do singles with 55 pounds in the press overhead several months back. And now yesterday she did 5 sets of 3 with 53, and it was easy.
Right.
And so, we've blown through that now. And so, but we did that through not only pressing, and for her, we used kind of an intensity volume press model,
right?
Where you and I have talked about that 8 sets of 2 or 7 sets of 3. I mean, I know 8 sets of 2 or 5 sets of 3 on the intensity side, even sometimes heavy singles if we're ramping that way.
Right.
And then on the volume day, we might do 4 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 5, something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's a lower percentage
at
load.
A lighter weight.
Yeah, at a lighter weight. And so we use that along with these accessory movements, and all of a sudden we're blowing our press again. We're going higher.
Yeah.
So that's a great example. So number one, we use accessory lifts, and accessory lifts are other lifts than the big four, the big fundamentals. The big fundamentals are the squat, the press, the deadlift, and the bench press. We can also add the power clean in there as one of those lifts. That's a dynamic effort lift, though, an Olympic lift. I don't see that as an accessory lift, though. I consider that
it's a pretty compound lift.
It's its own animal,
right,
in the dynamic effort world,
right.
But the accessory lifts are other lifts or other exercises outside of the big four and the power clean, and they are used for, number one, increasing the recovery cycle timeline. Number two, varying training, varying programming to maintain volume and time under load, to also to allow us to focus on other areas. It could be a form area, it could be a muscular development issue, it could be a confidence issue.
Right.
We're buying some time in programming. Number three, boredom.
Yeah, right.
You get bored with just doing 3 lifts.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, what else did we say? Last but not least,
hypertrophy and muscle growth.
Right. And getting more muscular size or growth to be able to help with the fundamental lifts, compound lifts.
So when you're talking about boredom in training, I mean, it's important for sure to have fun.
It's a huge
training.
Thing.
Yeah,
it's a huge thing.
And especially when you're a novice, like we harp on, screw your feelings. Don't, forget about the way you feel. Just do the work. Just lift, right? And that's very important because you have to learn what hard is. And you may not know that, and that's okay. But when you get, 6 months in your training, a year in your training, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it's hard to go in and punch the clock and squat, bench, deadlift, squat, press, deadlift.
When every workout is
every
a PR.
Workout, right?
Every workout's a PR.
Yeah, and you're just not going to be doing that 5 years down the road.
Right.
So
Trent, I'd like to know. Let's go down the line of the accessory lifts that we use most commonly. Guys, we could go down a list forever. Okay?
Right.
Lat pull down is an accessory lift. Okay.
Yeah.
All these different exercises are accessory lifts, but let's go down a list of the accessory lifts that we most commonly use with our trainees.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a list?
That sounds great. And I'll start with what the first things that I'll introduce to programming as a novice, and then as that person gets more and more advanced as a lifter, then what I'll start choosing. So the first thing we've already mentioned is the chin up, right? That might be one of the most important accessory lifts that you ever do.
Sure.
Because the chin up is still a pretty compound lift, right? You're using your lats, you're using your biceps, you're using your traps, you're training a lot of the back musculature.
Yeah.
And now the reason you've already mentioned, one reason why we would introduce the chin up, one is to give you more time between deadlift sessions, because deadlift sessions get pretty dang heavy pretty quick.
Yeah.
And you're already squatting too. So there's just a lot of back and hip work that's going on. This gives you a little bit of a break from that. It also targets your biceps directly, which none of the other compound lifts really do.
Right.
In a deadlift, you're the biceps under tension when you're holding the bar.
The bench press, actually,
bench press.
Any upper body barbell lift works the biceps because it's a co-contractor. It's either an agonist or an antagonist. It's working eccentric, concentric, one or the other. It's in there, but it's just not focused on.
It's not a focus. And where the chin up, it supinates the hand, so it makes the bicep,
bicep and lats
contract hard.
Yep.
So it's great for muscle growth.
Right.
Guys and girls that want that nice athletic looking frame that has that kind of taper from the shoulders down to the waist. Man, if you build a big back and big biceps, you're going to look like you train. And part of that is doing your chin-ups. So that's the first thing I'll do is 2 to 4 weeks into the program, depending on how heavy the deadlift is. When it starts to get grindy just a little bit, that's when you throw in the chin-up every other workout instead of the deadlift.
Yeah. My daughter was here recently with her fiance, and they were here for Christmas and the holiday season, and they trained 3 days that week with me. And I introduced the chin to Meg, my daughter, and she loves it. She's like, oh, I want to do more of these. Number one, it's something new.
Right.
Number two, the chin up can be a measuring mark for females, males too, but really for females in training.
Yeah.
Because the upper body is a weaker area on most females. Most of their size and mass is in their hips and lower extremities, their legs.
Right.
Not in their upper body structure or frame. And that's not always the case, but I would say that's a generalization.
Right.
And so being able to do eventually a chin up unassisted is a big deal.
Yes.
And it says a lot about body weight strength to weight ratio. It says a lot about strength to weight ratio in a female. A female that can do a chin up is reasonably very strong.
Right.
That's a big deal. Because that says she has enough upper body mass to lift her whole body up. I think it's crazy functional. It makes her harder to kill. If she could pull herself out of a hole, pull herself up off something. And I love the chin up. And so I think the chin up is one of those exercises that we use with novices. We use with everyone. But I'll tell you this, in the last 2 weeks, getting ready to start the new year, I've been leading my ladies class. They've been doing their banded chin ups. But before they do banded chin ups, they do as many unassisted chin-ups as they can do.
Yeah.
And so I've got Beth, my 67-year-old client, who's done 2 chin-ups in a row.
Yeah.
And Brenda's done 3, and she's 55. And so we're adding those in, just building their confidence. Say, look, you can do a body weight, full lowering and raising exercise. That's a big deal.
That's right. Yeah.
And
that's
so
huge.
Yeah, and so the chin-up is one of those exercises that we love to introduce.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk really quick about programming that. If you can already do chin-ups, body weight unassisted chin-ups, congratulations. 3 sets of as many reps as possible is a good starting point for your chin-ups, right?
Up to 8 to 10. I would say anything over 10, you need to change the resistance if you're doing banded chin-ups or if you're doing, you're going to talk about that, but yeah, up to 8 to 10.
That's right. Yeah. So if you can do 8 to 10 plus reps per set, then you need to add weight to the movement so that you're somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 reps, right? And then you just keep doing them as many reps as you can, and then hopefully you'll be adding reps over time. And then as those reps start to climb up, then you add weight until you're back down. You can only do 5 to 8 reps,
right? And
then so on, right? You can stair step that for a long time. Now let's talk about if you can't do a body weight unassisted chin up. Then there's lots of ways you can do this. If you don't have bands available, but you do work at a gym that has a lat pull down machine, that's a great place to start.
Sure.
With the lat pull down, I would pick a weight that's heavy as you can go and get 8 to 10 reps.
Right. Good form.
For 3 sets.
All the way down to the chest.
That's right.
Pull all the way down to the front of the chest.
Full arm extension at the top, pull all the way down to the chest. Go as heavy as you can, and the last 2 reps of that set should be pretty dang challenging.
Right.
That's a good place to start. From there, you can progress to banded chin-ups. You can add a resistance band to do a chin-up on a bar. And again, you're going to pick a resistance band that allows you to get in that 5 to 10 rep range per set. Do 3 sets of as many as you can. And once you start getting 8 to 10 plus per set, then decrease the resistance. And eventually you're going to get to a bodyweight chin-up. Now, for ladies or people that are maybe heavier males that have a harder time doing a chin-up, then I might also start to mix in from time to time after they've done a few weeks of that, just 3 sets, as many as possible. Negatives can be great. It's basically where you jump to the top of the bar, or you step up to the top of the bar and then let yourself down very slowly. You can do a whole bunch of singles, add those on after you've done your 3 sets.
Yep.
So that's a great way to do chin-ups. Guys, I'm telling you, if you want those big old biceps, in my personal experience, I have never seen a whole lot of bicep growth just doing barbell curls or single arm dumbbell curls. When I've loaded my chin up pretty heavy with weight around hanging off my waist, that's where I've noticed the bicep growth. Is when I was able to get the, put 25, 35, 40 pounds and do chin-ups.
Drop the weight reps
That's
down.
when I've noticed that bicep growth.
No, I agree. Yeah, I like the chin. We will program that in an alternating model. So like we'll use the ABA rotation that Starting Strength has in the blue book. And we'll modify that too sometimes. Sometimes if I'm really trying to work on building the chins, I may have them do it like they might do something like chin on Monday, deadlift on Wednesday, chin on Friday. And then in the next week, normally it would be deadlift on Monday, chin on Wednesday, deadlift on Friday. But sometimes in there, because the chins it's not a ton of volume.
Right.
It doesn't crush them. I might have them on Saturday just do some chin-ups.
Right.
Just to get a little bit more volume in there, because just doing them once a week sometimes isn't quite enough volume to continue to grow that muscle mass over time.
That's right.
So I might have them do it twice a week along with their deadlifts. So,
yeah, but that's a good point. As you get more advanced, you're going to want to chin up more frequently.
Right.
Because it becomes less of a break from your deadlift and it becomes more of a muscle mass builder.
Yeah, you need more volume.
Yeah.
You need more volume and more intensity, like we talk about in programming. So the next exercise would be barbell rows.
Yeah.
We could use barbell rows. I love to use barbell rows as a rest from deadlifts. I love to use them too to create that nice straight back position, lumbar extension position, and to put the hips under tension, build the lats. They're great to build the lats if done correctly. Mm-hmm. I usually program them at 3 sets of 8. And we start with a load again that is 3 sets of 8, slight slowing of the bar path, the same way we would all other lifts.
The last, especially, I think a good rule of thumb with these accessories is your last 2 reps, especially when you're doing higher rep sets, should be kind of grindy.
You should definitely be able to get them.
Yes.
But they should be something where you feel like you're doing work.
Absolutely.
A slight slowing of the bar path is a great way to look at that. Just the bar path slows down in the last 2 reps. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a good start. It's always better to start a little light than a little heavy because you get more blue sky in front of you, meaning you get longer time to ramp that load up over time. But I love the barbell row. I will use it when the deadlift really starts to grind or when people get a little bored with the deadlift. And I find that the row and the chins kind of complement each other too because of the development of the lats. The lat is way under publicized.
Oh, man.
The lat is way under given its due.
Yeah, it's underrated for sure. I think your ability to contract your lats is one of the most important skills in barbell training. And it's also probably one of the hardest skills to learn. Yeah. It's just an unnatural movement. We don't really do it in everyday movement that much. And so what I'm talking about is when we talked about the deadlift and setting up for the deadlift, when you get to the bottom and you squeeze your chest up to make that flat back, there's one other movement you have to make, and that's to squeeze your arms back or bend the bar back, however you want to think about it. And when you do that, if you do it correctly, that's your lats that are contracting. You're getting real tight. That's a really unnatural movement, hard for people to learn. Yeah. I find the barbell row, if people are really struggling with that aspect of deadlifts, that can be a good way to start to feel their lats. And one key I'd say about when you're performing the row, most people when they start barbell rowing will report feeling the weight in their arms, like their biceps or their shoulders. When you do them right, you're going to feel them in your back, in your lats. Those are your lats. And you won't really feel them much at all in the bicep or the shoulder. So when you really learn how to contract those and set your back flat,
squeeze up and back first,
squeeze up, then that's where the money is.
Yeah, and I think a real practical reason why we do the barbell row is when the bar starts to drift on someone forward a little bit, they can't keep the bar back on their shin. We make sure that their positioning and their setup is good, that they're coming off the floor with leg drive, that everything looks good there. But if the bar starts to drift on them a little bit and they're not quite able to keep that heavier load back against their shin, back against their thigh, then I love the barbell row to develop that lat and that pulling back position.
Yes.
And developing that for that. So the barbell row, again, a great accessory lift. Another accessory lift would be weighted push-ups. I like weighted push-ups or dips.
Okay.
We'll throw those in together. Weighted push-ups and dips, put in a plate on your back, having, a beautiful long-legged female sit on your back. No, I'm just joking. That's very, very, that's
or male.
chauvinism.
Could be a long-legged, beautiful male.
On a guy's back?
Yeah.
That's
for heavier loading.
That is awkward. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going there. This is not
Darren,
a PC show.
Darren, this is 2020 now.
I don't care if it's 2090. This is not a PC show. But no, I mean, weight on your back is the key.
Yeah.
So, and again, we would structure that as 3 sets of 8, and then you keep adding load, get 3 to 5, 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 8 reps, somewhere in that range. 5 to 10 reps is a good range.
Yeah.
But I love the weighted push-up, weighted dips and dips. Dips need to be done correctly for the older population, and basically the upper arm, the humerus, the bone between your elbow and the shoulder should never go below the horizon. In other words, we don't want the shoulder to tip below the elbow. We go to neutral, where that upper arm is neutral, keeping the chest upright. And we don't want to go any deeper than that. It's really tough on your shoulders. It's hard on your shoulders. But I love the dip to develop the chest.
Yeah.
And to develop the triceps, the anterior deltoid and the triceps and the chest. Great dip exercise. But guys with junky shoulders, dips can be tough.
Yeah, stick with the push-ups instead.
And you could go close grip push-ups to work on that area more. But that's another accessory lift that we throw in. You think of any other accessory lifts?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, one thing that you taught me that I really enjoy is if you're trying to focus on building muscle mass in your chest, you can superset your bench press with those either just body weight or weighted push-ups. And what I mean by superset is, let's say you're going to do a set of bench for a set of 8, right? So you do your set of 8. And immediately
on a volume day.
On a volume day.
Volume
yeah,
day.
I'm talking about more of like an intermediate who's focusing on muscle mass, right? You might do a set of 8 in your bench press. You rack it, you immediately drop down to the ground, and then knock out, say, like 10 push-ups, 15 push-ups if they're body weight, or if they're weighted push-ups, 5 push-ups. But you do it immediately after the set. And the idea here is that you get the heavier loading from the bench press with the barbell,
right?
But you drop down to the ground and you keep the pecs and the muscles under tension for a longer period of time, which is going to help you drive muscle growth. So that's a really fun and novel way to introduce some hypertrophy work or muscle building work into your bench press routine. You can do the same thing with the press too,
Sure.
if you want to work on tricep strength and tricep size. I like the curl as well in certain instances.
Curls.
Dumbbell curls, barbell curls. So some of my clients either don't have access to a lat pull down machine, or they don't have access to a chin up bar. I mean, you got to get a chin up bar. They're easy to get, but let's say you don't have one for whatever reason, or sometimes some of my clients will report chin ups just really beating up their elbows.
Yeah.
They have got real junky elbows.
Yeah.
So I'll have them curl instead. It's not a substitute for chin up.
Right.
It's not as good, but it still allows you to get some bicep work. And I'll program them just like we talked about the other list. So 3 sets of 8 to 10. And I'm looking for those last 2 reps to be pretty heavy and slow down. One thing I like about the curl, if you can do it, is always start with full extension down at the bottom. Should be resting against your legs if it's a barbell or dumbbells. And try to curl up to your chin. Most people, when they curl, they'll curl straight up to their chest. Right. That would be just really elbow flexion. If you can curl up to your chin, that requires a little bit of extra range of motion.
Flexion.
That it gets a little bit of shoulder flexion, works that anterior deltoid a little bit.
Works the long head of your bicep a little bit more too, because it's a shoulder flexor. So that's good. Yeah, I like the barbell curl. I like skull crushers or tricep extensions, lying tricep extensions.
It's a great one.
I like those too. And we use a French curl bar. You can use a barbell too on those, but a French curl bar is a little bit easier on the wrist.
Yeah,
I find
sometimes called the easy curl bar.
Yeah.
It's got that little squiggly
easy curl bar. Yeah, it's got like several peaks and valleys. I like using that. I also like using some accessory lower extremity or leg work. Sometimes do lunges, weighted lunges with the barbell. I love doing reverse lunges or split lunges with the barbell. If you've never done heavy barbell reverse lunges, split lunges, where you step back and you get that hip crease below the top of the knee on that front leg, your glute explodes. It is very glute and adductor intensive.
Right.
Because that leg, that hip's trying to stabilize that knee from valgusing and varusing. But I find those things will make your glutes crazy sore and your adductors crazy sore, just like a front squat does,
Yeah.
But I like adding those in. And I add those in sometimes I add those in if I'm trying to isolate a muscle group a little bit more. I'm trying to give someone a break from squats. Some of our older clients, which is this population,
right?
Squatting 3 days a week can get pretty tough on the knees.
Yes.
So I'll use the leg press too. We have a leg press in our gym, inverted leg press.
Yeah.
Or some people call it a hack squat too, I think. Is that a hack squat? I can't remember. Yeah. I think that's, hack squat might be upright. Yeah, you're standing.
Right, yeah.
So inverted leg press. We use the inverted leg press in our gym, and I'll have them maybe do squats on Monday, heavy. That's their heavy day. Then I'll leg press them on Wednesday, and then on Friday they'll do a light day of squats with a little bit more volume.
Yeah.
And so I'll do something like that. That just gives their knees a little break. And I find that using the leg press too can be a good accessory lift.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there. One of the other things that leg press does, because you could just use a lighter squat. Like you could do a 2 sets of 5 at 80% of your heavy day, right? To deload that light day.
Right.
But one of the things that the leg press does that the barbell squat is not going to do is the squat loads your entire body.
Right.
Even though it's a lightweight, your back is being loaded, your abs are working, all that stuff. When you get on the leg press, that kind of takes away a lot of that element of loading the back and the the shoulders and all that kind of stuff.
The knee load is different too. I find that some clients / patients that can't necessarily squat yet can leg press.
Right.
It just shifts the load more to the hips.
Yes.
And your quads and obviously your hamstrings are working hard, but the knee load is a little less too. So.
Right. So that's a good thing too that we haven't mentioned directly is when you use accessory lifts, one of the benefits is when you get more advanced, by definition, you are strong enough to cause a lot of stress within a single workout. And so what you might need is more volume with certain body parts without the systemic loading that the barbell lifts are going to do. One example there I'll give that I've had some success with lately is, with my press, my working sets got up to 3 sets of 5 at 185 plus. Yeah. And I was doing sets of 3 into the 200s, doubles at 225. I mean, I only weigh 195.
Right.
So that's when I lock that out over my head, that's a lot of load that my body's in compression with quite a bit of load. And so it's pretty taxing on my back. I'm also squatting and deadlifting too, right? And so if I need to get more volume, just doing 5 sets of 5 or sets of 8 with a barbell in my hands is still loading my body more than I want. So what I've used instead is dumbbells. With a dumbbell, I can do a lot more reps at a lower weight. So when I lock that press out overhead with a dumbbell, it's not as much loading on my body. The systemic stress is lower, even though it's just as hard because it's a dumbbell.
It's a harder motion.
Yeah, it's a much harder lift.
Dumbbells. I mean, if you took 90-pound dumbbells and tried to press them overhead, that'd be crazy hard.
It's harder than doing 180 on a barbell.
Well, the barbell stabilizes the load for you. You use a lot more stabilization, and I would use the term. There's a lot more going on when you do an overhead dumbbell press in regards to stabilizing that weight in this over the center of mass to keep it from moving forward, backward, and everything. It's less stable. It's a less stable load.
That's right.
I love the dumbbell lifts, dumbbell curls.
Yeah.
I like rows, bent over rows. Another good accessory lift. A dumbbell bench. I'm not a big fan of flies for older guys because of the stress load, but a dumbbell bench press, and you can go a little bit wider if you need to, but always keep those elbows down, just like you would on the bench press. I like those. So, yeah, I mean, these are all great examples of accessory lifts. So, again, we're going to use these lifts for those 4 reasons, and we use them frequently. I mean, and I think those, I hate to say this statement because I don't want people to go crazy with it, but be creative. Be creative with these lifts, but always have a rationale, logic, and reason as to why you're intervening or employing that particular lift.
Right.
Don't make up some stupid stand on a gymnastics ball and do one-legged barbell squats.
Right. Don't use a BOSU ball.
No.
Whatever you do.
No, you don't. No, you don't need to do that. But the accessory lifts are great to accessorize your training.
That's right. Yeah, so I think, closing thoughts, don't think too hard about them. They're accessory lifts.
Right.
Like I said at the beginning, they're only going to count for maybe 20% of your training. And this is for someone who's fairly advanced. Right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is when you're trying to progress the accessory lifts, because you're using smaller muscle groups, you won't necessarily be able to progress these in a linear fashion the same way you could your barbell lifts, right? With a squat, you can increase your squat 5 pounds for a good long time at the beginning, right? That may happen at the start for your accessory lifts, but pretty soon you're going to run into a plateau, and you're not just going to be able to just add weight every single time you do them. So what you should aim to do with your accessory lifts is progress them by adding reps or adding weight,
right,
with the goal to be both, right? Over time, that both the weight on the accessory lift goes up and the number of reps.
Right.
And so an easy way to do that is to just stair step it. So I'll take my dumbbell press example. You could do this for any of the accessory lifts. Let's say I can do 3 sets of 8 with 55-pound dumbbells, right? And next week I want to do 3 sets of 8 with the 60-pound dumbbells, but I can't do 8 reps. Well, I'll do 5 reps or 6 reps, right? And then the next time I come in, I'll use the same weight, 60 pounds, and I'll do 6 or 7 reps, and then 7 or 8 reps. And then once I get up to 8 reps again, then you increase the weight again. So you're kind of stair-stepping by adding reps first, then adding weight, then adding reps, then adding weight, and so on.
And remember, you're not driving that accessory lift merely by the accessory lift itself. You're driving it with the fundamental lifts too, the compound lifts that we're already doing in our programming.
That's right.
So we're combining all these things together. Keep it simple, guys, like Trent said. Keep it simple. The accessory lifts should be accessory to your primary training lifts.
That's
the
right.
Big fundamental compound lifts. And man, great talk. Thanks for joining us today at 40Fit Radio. Go to 40fit.com and go to the homepage and sign up for our monthly updates.
That's right.
Please do that as that grows. We're going to release our first monthly update in January 2020, and hopefully you'll enjoy the information that we're providing to you there. That also give us a way to contact you. We will not solicit you for gimmicks, and I hate that stuff. I'm not going to give we will never give your email out or personal information out to anyone other than ourselves, 40Fit Radio. And so I hate it when that happens. And so we will not do that. I am very old school when it comes to the intrawebs, that Trent will tell you. And so he tells me, step into the 90s, step into the 80s. But yeah, man, we love having you. Go on 40fit.com, enter the information, and we'll get back with you with our first monthly update. Also, go to 40Fit Radio on Instagram to follow us there. This will launch as probably our last podcast of the year, and then we'll have our next podcast, which is going to be very interesting to bring you into the new year, because we're going to talk about changing the narrative, and that's going to be our next podcast. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being with the 40 Fit Nation.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you next year.
Yep, later.